Hello, this is Christine Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about reparations from California. It looks like Gavin Newsom isn't signing on so much to the money that they're talking about dishing out, which is a lot. So he's not totally crazy, but the question is, why do they set up these panels and allow these kind of crazy people to do these things? And the answer is just pandering. That's why. I'm not saying they won't do something. But he's saying that reparations is more than just money, but it just kind of sounds like people want money, though. Doesn't it sound like people want money? So we'll be talking about that. Also in California, there's a politician who is talking about doing something about the law and writing a bill so that if you're a security guard, you cannot draw your weapon in order to protect property. So, I'm not surprised, and it says he's a democratic socialist, right, in his bio. So we'll watch that video and go through that. So there's kind of a theme today about how they just kind of want everybody to be helpless and weak, and while everyone else kind of roams around and gets what they want and not really doing things to help the country. And the question is, why do they do these certain things? So that's what we'll be analyzing today. Also, there's some news. There's a lot of breaking news going on with Trump's lawsuit, and Tucker is going to do a show on Twitter, apparently. But there's the congressperson Santos who's, in trouble now. But those stories are kind of not the Tucker story, but those stories are kind of taking up headlines and stuff. But the Oversight Committee did some interesting crunching of numbers with Joe Biden and his family, and saw that they had payouts and different connections to foreign money. So not a lot of people are talking about that, but I guess we'll go through the oversight, at least what they set up, so at least we're talking about something important. So but before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. I dropped 2 articles today, one about bathroom policies and how I feel about them specifically, and my reasoning for it. I put a short on TikTok and on YouTube about it, but I didn't have a lot to say in 60 seconds, so I did write everything down pretty much in a long form article, so to question kind of the logic between of some people who are okay with some people and not with other people. So it's a good read. I encourage you guys to check that out. Also, I did write an article about what we talked about yesterday on the show, and there's a lot of people who maybe aren't going to watch the whole entire show from yesterday as we go through the article about DHS doing training module scripts that list suburban white women or rural white women as terroristic level threats, I guess. And how they have to de-radicalize them. But I did write an article on it, so that's a bit easier to share. So I do recommend going ahead and sharing that around and letting people know that this is what your government thinks of you right now, and that they think the threats are are domestic right now, really domestic, and domestic housewife kind of domestic. So share that, because it is disturbing. It is very disturbing. I thought it was a really important story to break down yesterday, so happy to continue doing that. Not that other cultural things that we talk about aren't important. They really, really are. But our government weaponizing just normal beliefs of citizens and disagreements that they have with the party in power, that's bad when they really start kind of targeting you or teaching people to target you or teaching that your kind of normal beliefs are something that should put you on lists. So when people talk about red flag laws, I'm like, who's making it on the list to get red flagged? Like, I'm concerned about who's making it on those lists, who's making it on no-fly lists and other stuff like that. So we just don't live in a society, it seems right now, where there's a lot of people who really care about just blanket justice and serving the people beyond parties lines and stuff, and just going with principle and keeping their oath to the Constitution. I'm sure there's plenty of people in the government who maybe I want to be optimistic and say there's plenty of people who are in the government and are just trying to do a good job for the betterment of America. But then you question, like, what do they think is the betterment of America? So anyway, please share that article. Also, check out different merchandise on my website. Of course, I have my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, that you guys can get. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. You can get it on paperback, like this is a paperback book. Or you can get it on Kindle, or you can get it on Nook. So go ahead and pick it up and read through it. And go ahead and leave me a nice review if you like it. I mentioned this yesterday, but someone who was like pro-life, but they're not religious, they, like, well, I think it's better if you just argue without the religion. And I said, and I think that's true most of the time. I think that's true most of the time. But I was in a position where people would bring it up regardless. And so I just got sick of being misrepresented. So, and a lot of Christians don't know how to argue things. Like, they might say, like, it's against my Catholic beliefs or something like that. It's like, okay, but how do you, what exactly are the values? Like, you may know what you mean by that, but other people don't know. They just kind of know, like, a caricature. So when you say that, do you mean like, well, it's wrong to murder people? That should be like a given. Not controversial. It seems like it ought to not be controversial, and say, well, life is intrinsically valuable. Okay, we'll go with that. Like, explain why that is necessary. This book explains those things on a deeper level. But I explained to the pro-choice person that, pro-life person who's not religious. I'm like, there are Christians out there who will say that God gave us free will, therefore we should be able to do what we want, or let people not, or people should be able to do what they want, and then the judge will judge them one day. And that is an extraordinarily unchristian belief. And so I break that down. So I'm like, if you lose the religious right on this issue, or just you don't have to be on the right, just the religious period, like, you're going to lose, the pro-life movement's going to lose a lot of steam. So it's needed. I think it explains a lot for people who don't understand the position, who are not religious, but also people who are religious who are just deceived. So go ahead and check it out. Also, check out different shirts and stuff that I have on the website. Like, let me just show you one or something before I move on. Promise I'll get some new shirts and stuff too. Pro-choice men are sus. Short for suspect. We got Free Canada hoodies. We got these Rogue Casey aborted, which we're coming up on the anniversary, by the way, because we are 1 month out from my birthday. 1 month. June 10th is my birthday. And then 2 weeks after that is it's the anniversary of the Dobbs decision officially coming down. But it's also my youngest sister's birthday, so we're exactly 2 weeks apart. So yeah, check out different stuff that we have at the site. Also the You Are Not That Special mugs. You can give that to someone in your life. Also black tea. We got a lot of things you guys can check out. And if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blackteanews.com. It costs a stream, run my website, all that good stuff. And if you can support, please go ahead and support. There's things I would like to get, different equipment, and as I said, it costs to stream and do other things. So if you can help with the overhead, God bless you. If you're watching on Facebook, you can do stars, send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you can super chat, send super thanks and stickers and all that good stuff. I see you guys in the chat. Thank you guys for watching live, and thank you to people who watch this back later. I know people get off work and will watch, or sit down in the evening. There's the writer strike still going on right now, right? By the way, I shared this on YouTube, but not J.R.R. I mean George Martin, is it George Martin who wrote uh Lord of the not I'm sorry Game of Thrones series, that Song of Fire and Ice and stuff. I've never read the books or anything like that, but I know that famously he has not finished his books. So he tweeted out in support of the writer's strike. And so people were like, just trashing on him, dunking on him, because they're like, bro, you've been on strike for a long time. So anyway, let's jump to the news. So I do have a meme for you guys. I'm just gonna share my screen really quick because I didn't put it in my actual itinerary today, but so there we have it right there, me getting ready to move to California. So it is that Simpsons meme where he goes into the bushes and he is returning as a black man. So why is that? Well, because they are doing some crazy stuff in California as far as reparations. Now, keep in mind that California was not a slave state, so Joe Biden, that'd probably make him sad because he likes states that are apparently slave states, because he did brag about being from a slave state. I'm not making that up. You guys can look that up later. Actually, if you go to the website, I have an article about that on blacktnews.com, instances where Joe Biden says and does racist stuff. So, but the California governor, Gavin Newsom, is declining to back the reparation checks, which have been like pretty outrageous. And says that slavery's legacy is more than cash payments. So if they like put together the money that they were talking about originally putting together, it would just be too astronomically expensive to live in this state if you were not a black person. It would basically chase everyone out, or the white people out. So Gavin Newsom is a white person. And he would very much like to be president one day. And by the way, I'm not convinced that Joe is going to be their nominee. Like, I know we've seen videos of people like Simone Sanders saying like DNC isn't going to have any debates. They're not going to let any competition go on. But he's one, very old and unpopular. I guess that would be two. And I'm seeing polls. It's very possible that if it's not a Trump-Biden rematch, I don't think they'll want that anyway. If there's any inclination that like DeSantis or someone else is going to get that nomination, I don't think they're going to want a rematch with Biden. Now, do people necessarily care all that much if Biden is reelected? I think a lot of people hope that they will want to get rid of him. But I don't know. I think in cases like the Pennsylvania Senate race, we have seen that some people will just vote for a body because they expect that body to do super left-wing things. But I don't know. Some of the things are so left-wing that if Republicans vote for someone who they feel is not extraordinarily too controversial, then maybe they won't vote for Biden. Biden won't get the re-election. So I think there's a chance he could be reelected, but it depends how all the pieces are moved across the board. But I think that if Kennedy, for example, does decent in the polling, which he's doing decent for being like pretty much the only main contender against him right now and not having had a form of debate, I think other people will want to get hungry and jump in. And I think Gavin Newsom is someone who wants to jump in. If he feels that it's time, why would he wait? Especially if the race could be something like Florida versus California. So I think he's a person who backs crazy radical policies, but maybe him pausing and not being like, oh yeah, we totally need to pay and bankrupt all the white people in our state. I think maybe that's him thinking a little beyond his state's stupidity for what could happen in the future. So anyway, Fox is reporting on this. First on Fox, California Governor Gavin Newsom declined to endorse the cash payments, which could reach as high as $1.2 million for a single recipient, recommended by the reparations task force, telling Fox News Digital that dealing with legacy of slavery is about much more than cash payments. The reparations task force's independent findings and recommendations are a milestone in our bipartisan effort to advance justice and promote healing. This has to be an important process, and we should continue to work as a nation to reconcile our original sin of slavery and understand how that history has shaped our country, Newsom said in a statement to Fox News Digital. While the Democratic governor applauded the task force work, he declined to endorse any specific recommendations, though he pledged to continue to advance systemic changes that ensure an inclusive and equitable future for all Californians, which they use that word equity or equitable rather than equality because they don't want equality. They believe that you have to kind of Frankenstein yourself into a fair situation, which you can't make fairness out of being unfair, but that's why they use that word rather than equality, like making white people who had nothing to do with slavery in a state that what people weren't enslaved pay for things. Dealing with that legacy is about much more than cash payments. Many of the recommendations put forward by the task force are critical action items we've already been hard at work addressing, breaking down barriers to vote, bolstering resources and address hate, enacting sweeping law enforcement and justice reforms to build trust and safety, which California is not building safety at all. Strengthening economic mobility, all while investing billions to root out disparities and improve equity in housing, education, healthcare, and well beyond. This work must continue, he said, following the task force submission of its final report this summer. I look forward to a continued partisanship with the legislature to advance systemic changes that ensure an inclusive and equitable future for all Californians. That's not going to be possible if they implement things that this task force wants. The task force recommendation breaks payments down by types of historical discrimination. For instance, Black residents affected by redlining by banks would receive $3,366 for each year they lived in California from the early 1930s to the late 1970s, amounting up to $148,099. Similarly, Black residents could receive roughly $2,352 in compensation for over-policing and mass incarceration for each year they lived in California between 1970 and 2020. Those payments could amount to $115,260 for a Black California who checks enough boxes. The total payout could reach $1.2 million. Compensation for over policing. That's crazy. I want the police to show up to my neighborhood. I want them to be available when I call, when I need them. I don't have to call them that often. When I do, it's usually because I've seen something and need to say something. I don't know, maybe like a concerning domestic violence situation where you hear. One time my sister saw someone and it looked like there's a couple getting into it and that he was starting to carry her off to some bushes. And she called the police. Yeah, people call the police, and Black people call the police. We call the police all the time. Everyone calls the police. Everyone feels that we need the police. Even with people will call the police to deal with people and then be like, nah, I don't want them charged. But people call the police, whether they really want them to do something or not. People call the police. The over policing. I'm not saying that people aren't. Police aren't all hands clean or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but if there's areas with high crime, those are the areas that need policing. And when they're not in those areas, people who are not committing crimes, who are normally the victims of crimes, are the ones who suffer. And when you don't have an accurate or appropriate amount of police officers in a neighborhood that is that has high crime or whatever and highly populated, um, it gets really scarce on what calls they're going to answer, what time they're going to get there, and if they're going to get there in a timely manner. And we have people who want to get rid of firearms, so the police aren't going to be there in a timely manner. So how are you going to protect yourself, especially from criminals who are going to get their guns illegally or whatever? So I'm reading this article all the way first time to you guys, so that's when my mouth dropped when I read that over policing thing. That's wild to me. The task force final recommendations will soon be submitted to the California legislature, which will then decide whether to implement the measures and send them to Newsom's desk to be signed into law. There's crazy people in California. I have no doubt that maybe they will do something. James Gallagher, California Assembly Republican leader, said that this has been a fool's errand from the start. And perhaps for a lot of it, maybe it has been, but people do this kind of stuff to pander. And I don't think Newsom's going to look like he totally wasted everyone's time. So, and again, there's a lot of crazy people in California who sign write bills. So, there might be something done. There might be something done to the radical degree that they're pushing. Or suggesting. I don't think so. Depending on how, I think, I don't know, the possibility of some of the redlining stuff could make sense to me, but, other stuff, not so much. And again, California, just because it's not a slave state doesn't mean that, they didn't have, discrimination, other things like that going on, but Black people aren't the only people in this country who've been discriminated against either, and Black people have discriminated against other folks in our races too, though people don't want to say that because they lack the institutional power is what they'll say. But we'll follow the story, we'll see what happens, but I think a lot of it is pandering, and they'll continue to pander this, and they'll slide some checks here and there. But do people just need checks, or do we need like just a radical restructure of our way of thinking and our culture? Something that's pretty interesting, and I've mentioned this before, but if you haven't heard this before, the minimum wage, for example, was not created for the benefit of the little man. Not at all. The minimum wage has a history in eugenics, and it was actually created for the purpose of like more highbrow kind of people who didn't want to work for competitive wages. And like, let's say there's a white guy or something, and they're like, I don't want to work for, let's say the amount's $5 or something. Like, that's too low for me. And a Black person is like, I will work for $4.95. And they're like, okay. So they'll hire the Black man. Now you could say, oh, that's wrong, he should be getting more. The true minimum wage is $0. The true minimum wage is $0. So the point is that this person would have a job and would be able to take care of their family. And now you have this person who's mad because they're too good to work for that amount. So what do? They come up with the minimum wage. So now there's a floor where they have to hit, the real minimum wage is $0, but let's say now the number is $6 or something. And the guy's like, I'll work for that. And people who are kind of maybe racist anyway aren't going to go hire the Black guy anymore. So now he's out of a job. So there are different eugenicists who knew, like Royal Meeker, who worked under the Woodrow Wilson administration, who knew that if we implemented minimum wage, that it would lead to higher unemployment of people who they deemed to be undesirables and whatnot, which include Black people, not just Black people, but Black people for sure. And he thought that was a good thing, right? And the reason why they thought it was a good thing is because if they're unemployed because of minimum wage, then they'll get on the government teat and they'll get on welfare. And if they're on welfare and on the government teat, they can't go out and kind of make their own destiny, taking care of their own family, having that sort of, agency and independence that they would have had before. And if they're under the government control, needing this money to survive, then that's a way that the government can control this individual. And I'm not making this up. This is history. This is things. These are plots that people actually had. So the government doesn't normally do things out of the kindness of their hearts. They just don't. Even things like school lunch programs are meant to bring subsidies to, you know, buying up different lobbyists, making deals to buy up different farm, you know, products and stuff. Not because they care so much about the children. You know, there's always games to this. That's why people in Alaska will be like, we need to add some salmon in the kids' menu. And it's like, salmon? Like... There's a really interesting article I read about that topic some time ago, but yeah, that's why they wanted minimum wage passed and stuff. So people want you to have checks and other things to be distracted from you going out and making your name, making your own destiny, taking care of your family, saying, I'm in charge. I have the power of the individual, and me and my family, we're going to build strong communities, and we're going to be able to rise, and no one can tell us what's what because we have the power. If you're limited by a worldview under the government teat, like under their thumb, it changes a lot of things. Like, I don't know if you guys know people who have like basically been attached to welfare, or people or young women who are like, I'm going to have a baby just to get on government assistance or something like that, that with no father, no marriage, like it's totally corrupted different inner cities and communities. And you just continue to decay and decay, and it causes crime and other things to go up. And then these dummies are like, you know what? We shouldn't have over policing. But at least they're giving you some more money. What are you going to spend it on? Who knows? Who knows? But they don't expect you to make a future. They just expect you to take some hush money while they keep kind of trying to destroy your life right under your nose. So, someone asked me the other day, well, it wasn't really asking, it was more like, they accused me and pro-life people of like, well, why, if pro-life people, you know, they're so pro-life, why don't they want to support, you know, welfare or government, healthcare or paid maternity leave and all that kind of other stuff. So one, I didn't end up replying to this person yet. I think I was going to do like a bigger post or something. I just didn't have time to write it. There are pro-life Democrats. I know that's surprising, but there are pro-life Democrats who believe in all those things and support all those things. There's, well, you know, you don't have to be a Democrat. You can be an independent or whatever. Or there are populist kind of pro-life people on the right, or there's just people on the right in general who see that compassionate side and want to go ahead and invest in some of those things. Maybe like not to the degree that maybe the Democrats, support, but they believe that's a good way to help women. I'm of the mindset that I don't think it's good to have that much, to owe the government that much. One of the reasons why the government felt like they could, during the pandemic, Biden had there was a couple lawsuits against Joe Biden. One of them was the OSHA mandate for like the 100 employees. That one got struck down, right? When he was trying to force businesses with more than 100 employees to make their employees get vaccinated. And if they didn't, they had to get tested like every week or every 2 weeks or something like that, regardless of of whether they had it or not, and natural immunity. It was really a crazy policy that was meant to coerce people into just complying and getting the jab. So that ended up getting struck down by the Supreme Court. But there was another lawsuit that I think was wrongly decided, but it is what it is. Another lawsuit that said that healthcare workers had to be jabbed. And the reason why they had to be jabbed is because their professions involved government money, like for like Medicaid, Medicare, whatever. So because their professions were attached to government funding, the government, even the Supreme Court, decided that the government had a right to make them comply and put this, in their system. So the more that you are attached to government money, the more you're entering a relationship that a deal with the devil, basically. You don't know what they're going to ask for, and you don't know when they're not going to ask, when they're going to demand. And I think that's really dangerous grounds. I do. Think about people got really riled up when I mentioned that the Biden administration had enacted a policy that if schools don't comply with transgender ideology, that they're at risk at losing their funding, including like for school lunch programs and stuff. And so there's actually been schools that the Biden administration has tried to target, and they were sued, and then they backed off. But the policy is like still in place, so it could happen anywhere. But Biden wasn't like the first one to do that. Back in what year was it? It was at least 2016, but maybe it was earlier than that when this all started. But there was a child in Illinois who said he was a girl and he wanted access to girls' locker rooms. And he, they were like, well, you can use the girls' bathroom. And he was like, no, I don't want the bathroom. That's uncomfortable. I want access to the locker room. So they tried to accommodate him in a way that was maybe going to make him comfortable, and it's a compromise for him and also the women who don't want to share a locker room with him. But he filed a complaint to the Department of Education, and the Department of Education sided with him. And then they had to like comply, or else they would risk losing like $6 million worth of funding. So they ended up, parents came together and ended up suing them and stuff. And so Trump ended up like rolling back things that the Biden, that Obama did and stuff. But, the old regime is basically back with Biden. So they're willing to strip away millions of dollars. It's not something that a school would just be like, oh yeah, we can afford to lose $6 million or millions of dollars, or a whole entire free lunch program for low income kids. They're not gonna just be like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll play that game of chicken. So the more entangled you are with the government money, the more basically you're their slave, So I don't think that the solution for families is to be more indebted to them, because you aren't indebted to them when you take their money like that. And it kind of gets to a situation where it's a little bit like crack. And you need another fix, and you'll do what you need to, including voting a particular way to make sure that you're not cut off. So I don't think that's a kind or compassionate thing to do to people. I think that charity is kind and compassionate when it comes to like, pro-life community or Christians in general. Like we have a pretty good record on those sorts of things, but people don't care. But and also side note, I know a lot of women list like financial reasons as to why they have abortions and stuff, but I don't really think that speaks to the root of why they do it. I think it's just because they're conditioned to dehumanize them. I think that's really why. So I don't think throwing money at the situation would really solve things. If that were the case, though, if that were really the case, then why isn't our government or these pro-choice organizations, why are they spending so much money to expand abortion rather than funding mothers, funding scared potential mothers? Why don't they do that if just more money would solve the problem, having resources to more money? Because they just want people to abort their babies more. That's just to be frank. But I think maybe it would help some. But I think it's our mentality that's really the problem, and people are going to keep molding people's mindsets a particular way as long as they want the industry to continue. And I think those are just kind of the facts. So let's move on to this also California politician, and what he said about getting rid, well, not protecting property.
Everyone, District 5 Supervisor Dean Preston. As the pressure continues to mount for the district attorney to release the videotape of Walgreens security guard shooting and killing Banco Brown, we also need to take some action to make sure this never happens again. That's why today at the Board of Supervisors, I will be calling for legislation to specifically prohibit security guards from drawing their weapons to protect property. Human life is more important than property. We need to change our local law so that security guards cannot unholster their weapons just to protect property.
So, people have really been pushing this idea about, people's lives being more important than property. And I'm not saying that's not true. But they say it in a way like you should just shut up and take the fact that people are stealing from you. That's kind of what it's like. I do agree that people's lives are more important than property. And I think that's precisely why you shouldn't steal. Because I keep saying that it's not that Black lives matter. It's that you have to believe that your life matters as an individual. And if you do believe that your life matters, then you wouldn't do dumb things that maybe get you short-term satisfaction, but could potentially ruin your life or end it. So, I don't think that that your property is more important than someone's life, especially something that you'll pick up at a Walgreens. But that's precisely why you shouldn't risk your life to take something at a Walgreens or anywhere else, whether it be a Target or people were stealing. I saw someone steal a cheesecake during the BLM riots when people were just stealing stuff all over the place, like running out with a cheesecake, jiggling. I'm not joking. I'll have to look for that video if it's somewhere. If someone knows where that is, please send it to me. But yeah, act like your life matters. Do not risk it for stupid stuff. Do not break into people's homes. Do not try to take their crap and think that people won't defend their property or defend their families. Don't burn down people's neighborhoods. During the Kenosha riots and other stuff like that, or just different stuff going on during the Summer of Love, people were like, oh, if you complain about this stuff, people rioting and looting, which these are crimes. So why aren't we all like, that's bad, right? We should all be like, that's bad. But they have this attitude that if you complained about it, then they told you, they said to you that you care about things more than you care about Black lives. And I'm like, what does that have? Why would you say that? And two, why are you justifying the stealing? Or they might say, I'm not justifying the stealing. Like, why can't we just say they shouldn't be doing that? And people say, well, this is the cry of the unheard. Or they'd say, there was one video, this is probably my first video that went, did pretty well on TikTok. So I was replying to a woman who said, basically it was like reparations in a way, and they could loot and steal all that they want, and it will never erase the debt that's owed to us. And I said, nobody owes you nothing. Nobody owes you nothing. So going on and trying to strategically to cause terror to people, that you're a terrorist going around doing this stuff. Like, be better. Like, and you're terrorizing your community where you live. Now there's people who came out of town to do different stuff in whatever cities stuff was happening, but people in their own neighborhoods would steal from their own stores, burn down their own stores or whatever, except like the Waffle House. They're like, oh, we can't do the Waffle House. There's a video of like, I think it was in Atlanta, where people were like protesting and doing other kind of stuff. And then they got by a Waffle House and like, hey man, not the Waffle House. Keep going. And they all decided that it was like, I guess, like the Passover. It was like the lamb's blood was on the door. They're like, not the Waffle House. Then they just like went by it. So, but they would destroy their own communities for this madness and steal a bunch of crap. And and have the attitude that, well, people have insurance, so they'll be able to recover. That's not how that works. By the way, I don't know how many of you worked in retail, but a lot of people, most people I think, have worked in retail at some point of your life. It's not fun filing like theft reports at the end of the night at all. So one, that's a crap ton of paperwork. So thanks a lot for that. And if it gets too expensive, you're still just gonna one like you make insurance go through the roof. So mom and pop stores on those blocks really can't afford to even be there. And then you're mad because your favorite store is gone. And then you're mad because all that's left are these big corporations that you hate. And then even they have to leave because it's just too expensive and too much of a risk to be there. So we've really messed up our world, really messed up our country. Like people get so frustrated, like watching American politics, and they don't understand like our situation with our firearms and stuff. And I'm like, you don't understand how things are right now, and maybe things are you have different issues other places where you live, but in the like if getting rid of like all of our firearms, or even like AR-15s. I'm going to play a dumb clip from a professor who said some really ridiculous stuff. The criminals aren't just going to give up their firearms. And we don't seem very enthusiastic about prosecuting our criminals and making sure that they go away for a very long time. So if that's the case, you're just making victims out of innocent people and telling them that they can't defend themselves. And you could say, well, you don't have to defend yourself with an AR-15. That's true. You don't have to. Though a lot of people are just afraid of it because it's a scary looking firearm and a gun that maybe has wood or something on it. People are like, oh, that one's okay because they just perceive it to be, I don't know, a hunting gun or something like that. Like Steven Crowder did a video where he was like surveying people to see which gun should be banned, and basically they would be like, oh, that one's fine, and it would be like more dangerous than the black terrible guns. But it's all about perception for a lot of people. But once you get rid of the AR-15s and stuff, you just come for the firearms, because more mass shootings are committed with firearms, and some of these people who commit mass shootings are still armed with firearms. They're not just armed with AR-15s. They would just find another way to do it. And by the way, like, I remember back when there was bomb threats and other things like that people were concerned about. People would just find a new medium to hurt people. There was somebody who run down people with a car the other day. So, like, I know people can't understand from other countries because they don't have, the association with firearms that we do, but we have so many. And again, criminals are not going to get rid of them anytime soon. Let me go ahead and play this video from I think it's MSNBC, of this professor saying some really, really silly stuff about firearms.
The country refuses to protect our babies and then expects those same children to grow up to save the country. Isn't that?
Yeah.
And, it's just terrible on a certain level. It's a corrupt.
Oh, okay. So before I move on and allow him to say his rant, I just can't pretend like I don't know that these are the same people who believe in like no limitations on abortion. I just can't do that, It's the same baby. It's the same child, like, at different points of their life. So I don't understand. We went through Tim Pool's video when he talked to Lance from the Surfs the other day, and he mentioned they were talking about gun deaths for a little bit, and and he mentioned like they got on the subject of late term abortion. And he's like, oh, but it's such a small percentage. And they're like, that's like 13,000 babies. And he's like, well, yeah, like we have a really big country. The numbers would be staggering. And they're like, it's like the same amount of like gun deaths without like, unaliving yourself. And so they're like, is 13,000 like a bad number of kids to die? And he's like, or people to die. And he's like, and he just wouldn't process it. He'd just be like, they're different. It's a different scenario. And of course it's a different scenario, but the thing about me is I think they're both bad. I think they're both bad. But people think it's okay in other circumstances. And that's just wild to me. I can't, when they say stuff like this, I just can't pretend like I didn't notice or think about it. So let's keep going.
Of the soul. It's a corruption of the soul. We talk about fighting for the soul of America, right? This reality, it reflects a kind of corruption of the soul for me. And
I agree with that, though. I do agree that when we have people who do not value life, you do have a deep corruption of the soul. And we don't talk about the soul of the nation. That's a Joe Biden line that is rich coming from him. But yeah, I do think there is a rot in our society, and I think so much of it is we devalue human life, and we dehumanize one another, and I think that speaks to so many different levels. But we also do not value our own lives. People get ticked off when you even say all lives matter. Even that statement is so political. So yes, we do have a deep corruption, a rot of our souls as a nation. Yeah, we do. But then he's gonna say some dumb stuff that doesn't make sense.
it seems to me, and I'm just going to echo something that Rev said, we can talk about the NRA, we could talk about, the gun manufacturers, we could talk about Republicans. We have to fight for a world where this is not happening. Right, because I have a sneaking suspicion, Joe, that data that we just showed, that mass murders are actually correlated with the availability of the AR-15.
Right.
Of assault weapons. And so it seems to me that there could be a general agreement among all Americans that that weapon should not be in the hands of Americans, that it shouldn't be on our streets. And so if we can't make that decision, it's not just simply about Republicans and the NRA and the gun law. It's about us. If we can't fight to get those weapons off our streets so we can protect our baby.
So it is very nice that people are so passionate about things they do not understand or know anything about. It is so nice. But it would be better if people had informed opinions about things that they so passionately care about. Most mass shootings are committed with handguns. They are. And if people didn't have, for close range stuff, people could do a lot of damage with having firearms, that are, handguns and stuff. And you can conceal them. So to use this logic and say, oh, there must be a correlation between these guns being available, which they've been available for a long time, and their AR-15 is a very popular firearm, to be like, we got to get them off the street because of the mass shootings. Bro, with that same logic, they will just come for your handguns. I understand people think it's a big scary gun and it's used. We're seeing it in the news a lot. I understand that. But I want people to understand that with this logic, with this argument, once they get rid of the scary gun that people are politicizing a lot, they will just look at the data and say, oh my gosh, regular handguns are used in more mass shootings. And they'll be like, we have to get rid of all guns, except for maybe like, I don't know, a shotgun or a hunting gun or something like that. Or whatever, really, really specific kind of purposes or whatever, and they'll want to get rid of it, and then people will just use sawed-off shotguns or knives or bombs. So you're not helping. You're not helping by not knowing what you're talking about. You're not helping. And there are people who are far bigger gun experts than I am, but bro, they'll just go for the rest of them. And maybe they don't care. Maybe that's what a lot of people want. That's not what a lot of people admit to, but there, what he said about the rot and the issue of America and where we are and our thinking and stuff. Again, I agree with that, but his thing is we're corrupt because we don't want to make the move. Something is wrong because we don't want to get rid of this particular firearm. That's where he thinks the moral decay is, because they're like, I want to use this for, whether people use it for hunting or sports or, you know, home protection or anything like that, and people use it for all those instances, and those are valid, right? But the real problem is that we don't value our lives. We don't value our futures. We don't value our own children unless they're wanted. And that's pretty sick. The video, if you didn't watch our coverage of the Tim Pool conversation with the serfs, it's really worth watching, whether you watch it directly, the whole thing from Tim Pool's channel, or you want to watch the commentary that we did the other day. The mental gymnastics for the things that they defend is like pretty astronomically terrifying. And we just want things. We don't want to build things. We're willing to destroy without knowing what's next, or why certain foundations exist. We're at a bad place. We're at a remarkably bad place. I saw a video the other day and it had a lot of swearing, and someone ended up kind of topless, so I didn't want to share it and watch it live with you guys. Not topless like their bra came off, but topless. So this video was a student came into the principal's office at a school, black school, and started fighting with and with parents and other stuff. It was like a big brawl in the office. And it was so ratchet. So ratchet and messed up. And people in the comments were like, oh, I worked in inner city schools. This is like just kind of everyday things. And it's sad. You know, there were some fights and stuff when I was going to inner city school and stuff. I moved out to a rural school about the middle 7th grade, and we didn't have a lot of fights out there. But there are other people who, you know, who stayed in my community who told me about things that got pretty intense, at fights they had at their school, where like people had to show up in like SWAT outfits and stuff like that. So, watching that video of these children fighting adults and these adults throwing hands with children and cussing each other out, I said I'm really concerned about what happens when older generations die out. What happens when we start like losing like baby boomers or even like Gen Xers and stuff, and not to say that they didn't have like some ghetto wretched people or whatever within their timelines and other things like that, but I'm concerned about what happens when a lot of these kind of, you know, matriarchs and patriarchs of a different generation and different value system and beliefs go, and we're just kind of left with what we've made as of recent. You know, I thought about this at a funeral I attended last year, and she's probably born, Mother Reed was born probably early 1900s, because she worked through the Depression and helped her mom and other things like that. She had to drop out of high school to help her. She ended up marrying a soldier, and when he came back from, you know, the war and stuff, and she has she has a big family, or had a big family, and the service was at her son's church. One of her sons was in the Christian Group Commission. And she had a lot of grandchildren there, great grandchildren. And someone got up and was like, look at her legacy. Look at all these people. And all these people who have been touched through this woman's life, this one woman's life. And I thought it was pretty remarkable. And, you know, and my grandmother had passed away not too long, you know, ago. I mean, it's been a few years now, but thinking about these people from these great generations who instilled such conviction into the people they raised and then the people who they raised afterwards. I'm like, what's going to happen when all these people are gone? And then what's going to happen when, you know, they're dying off? And then what happens when, like, my dad's generation dies off? I'm just concerned. I'm concerned. I don't know if you guys are concerned. I'm concerned. I am glad that I'm a Christian, because at least I can say, well, you know, we need revival. And a lot of things I'm like, Jesus, you got to fix it. So I know there's only so much that I can do, and I'll do what I can. But, you know, it's some things aren't going to change unless you do things throughout generationally, and unless there's some kind of like supernatural move of the spirit. So I'm like, well, I believe in that happening, but in the meantime, I got to keep doing what I'm doing, you know, from a spiritual standpoint and politically. So we'll keep talking about these things and going through them together, and hoping that we can change the world. But we're living in some wicked times, guys. Last thing I want to mention, and I'll maybe go through it more tomorrow, because I'm going to have to go. I don't want to go super long or over today, but it's worth mentioning that, and I did mention at the beginning, but the Oversight Committee has been investigating Biden's finances. So I just want to show you guys this thread really quick. I'm not going to read through it. We can read through it tomorrow, but I just want to show you guys so you can, if you want to look this up, you can go look it up. There's a lot of news going on right now, and a lot of people aren't talking about this particular thing. So the Oversight Committee has said, breaking: since taking the gavel in January, our committee has accelerated our investigation into Biden's family, domestic, and international business practices. We want to update you on a few of our findings for this ongoing investigation. We have now established a network of over 20 companies formed by the Bidens and their associates. Most of these companies were LLCs and formed when Joe Biden was vice president. Based on the financial records we have obtained via bank subpoenas, we can now confidently trace at least 10 million in total from foreign nationals and their related companies going to the Biden family, their business associates, and their companies. So it's a lengthy thread, and they even have some infographics in there, so we can go more at length, I think, tomorrow. And for people who are like, it's not a big deal, don't you dare tell me it's not a big deal, when people were obsessing about Clarence Thomas going out with a friend and his friend paying for stuff for him, like different trips, when it specifically said that he didn't have to report stuff like that. Now they recently have changed those rules, and it's like people want to retroactively go back and punish him. It's a hit job, because they've obviously hated Clarence Thomas, and they've always hated him. They wanted him borked, didn't even want him on the Supreme Court, and now they're, of course, uber mad at him, and will be mad at him forever because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So, you know, he will forever be the black guy that they hate. So don't tell me this isn't important when they cared about, you know, him getting trips from a friend or whatever. So again, that didn't need to be reported at the time he was taking the trips or whatever. So don't tell me that this isn't important, or at least interesting, especially when there's been a lot of lies from the Bidens about this. Like, if it would be like, oh yeah, of course we like bought influence or had people around or got money. Of course we did. Like, why wouldn't, like, you know, if people were honest about stuff. That's one reason why Dave Chappelle has a great skit about Trump and why people like him so much. And he said that watching Trump was like unlike watching anyone else, because he'd be like, yeah, I use a system. That's how I know how to fix it, because I use it. And Dave Chappelle's just like, gosh dang. He's like, is he being honest right now? So, you know, not that I'm saying that, you know, Trump is like infallible when he speaks or something like that, but if it's not a big deal, then people don't have to cover up and lie about stuff. But they have been lying for a long time. So guys can go ahead and check it out if you can't wait till tomorrow. But just wanted to let you know before I let you go. Okay, so a couple announcements. Tomorrow I will not be doing my show at 4. I will be doing it later. We'll say 5 o'clock. We'll shoot for 5 o'clock. Reason being is that I have an interview tomorrow that I have with a pretty good guest, a great guest. I'm very excited. So I will tell you now that I will be interviewing, outside of there being some kind of emergency or something, I will be interviewing Riley Gaines tomorrow. If you don't know Riley Gaines is a swimmer who's been speaking up against men playing in women's sports. She is one of the girls who tied. She's the girl who tied with William Leah Thomas and was told that she couldn't hold her trophy for the photo op, and that Thomas had to hold the trophy. So she has been speaking out since then and making the rounds. She was harassed heavily when she went to go visit a university in California. So she's coming to Michigan for an event tomorrow. So before the event, I will be able to conduct an interview. So I'm excited to do that. So by the time you see me tomorrow live, I will have already conducted it, but I will not have it properly edited by then. So I will probably have to have that shown to you guys on Friday. But I'm excited, and I really admire what she's doing and speaking up, because Lord knows, as it was all going down, I'm like, why aren't these girls speaking up? So now she is speaking up, and now she's being really, really ostracized and attacked and even harassed, physically harassed. So I think what she's doing is courageous. So I'm glad to talk to her. And if you're going to that event tomorrow, I'll be also singing the national anthem. I was asked to do that. So it's always an honor to be asked. So also, I will be at Motor City Comic Con, not this weekend, but next weekend. And I will have, my books. So if you're in the Metro Detroit area, or you like traveling or something, you can find me in Artist Alley. The booth will just say Christina Elbar, author Christina Elbar. I do have, they did send the map of where I'll be, but I haven't looked at it yet. So I'll have my books there. So if you guys want to, come get a signed book, you can do that. Also, please check out my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. It's available on Kindle and paperback and Nook. So you guys can get it from Barnes & Noble, or you guys can get it from Amazon. So please go ahead and get that for yourself. Get that from someone who needs to read it. And it's got a lot of great stuff in here besides theology. It talks about biology. It talks about social stuff. It talks about why women have been kind of... their brains have been constructed to believe that they need abortion so fiercely. So... go ahead and pick this up. It's got a lot of great stuff in there for philosophy and other stuff like that. History, why we need more absolutes, intrinsic value, whatnot. So pick that up. If you just search my name, Christina Elbar, on Amazon, you should find it. Also, if you just go to blackteennews.com, literally that's the landing page right now. So it should be easy to find. I also write other books, as you guys obviously know, because I am selling them at Comic-Con. I have 17 that are published now. 2 are nonfiction, the rest are fiction. So if you're interested, please go ahead and buy some of my babies. Support people trying to create a different culture. So go ahead and check them out, and make sure that you guys are checking out my store, my merchandise. Share different articles that I've dropped. Like I dropped 2 today on my website, so please go ahead and share them. And if you like what I do here, please consider, the Bible says you have not because you ask not. So I'm asking you point blank, if you are able to support, please go to blacktnews.com/donate and consider leaving a donation, whether it's a small gift of like $10, or if you want to do more like 50, 100. I appreciate, I've gotten like 2 before, 200 and stuff before. So, and it needy times. So it costs to stream, run my website, all that stuff, but there's equipment and other things that I would like to get and need to get and stuff. So if you can, it's very much appreciated. If you can't, I understand, but I thank you for watching. I thank you for commenting. All those things do help. So just make sure that you share. That does all really help grow Black Teen News. But if you can go that extra mile, God bless you. I really, really do appreciate it. So I said this to somebody the other day, or I remember a post or something. I said, I'm just a girl trying to, build a dream. And it hasn't always been easy, but I thank people for being with me on this journey and wanting to be part of the conversation, and people who find me interesting or like find my perspective interesting. And I'm glad to be able to do it, and I'm glad for the support I've had along the way, and I'm glad that people have subscribed, like on YouTube and stuff, and I've gotten to the point where, I'm monetized and stuff. I'm not, but my following isn't that large that it's like, quit your job kind of money yet, but I do thank you guys. So God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.